We're moving faster than I thought we were going to move, so here we go now. Right. After clause 74, that then brings us to Amendment 26, Baroness Fox of Buckley. It's you.
I thought we were going to have a vote.
We surprised you, Baroness.
I'm not ready. Right. Calm yourselves. Right, my lords. On Saturday, I went to visit my home in Wood Green. It looks like a bomb site. There's no roof. There's huge amounts of scaffolding and barbed wire fences surrounding it, and a block of 25 two-floor maisonettes. And what you see when you arrive is a huge multicoloured fluorescent sign with the word zero tolerance, and then a list of prohibited activities all relating to safety. Safety helmets must be worn, safety footwear must be worn, no smoking, danger, tripping hazards, danger, men working ahead, danger, no children on the site. Safety signs and procedures must be observed, we're told. So I know, having visited my home in Wood Green, that Haringey Council are definitely keen on promoting safety. But let's consider this. My home is in this state because 2 years ago there was a fridge fire in one maisonette. The roof of the block caught fire and the other flats were drenched, including mine, by the fire brigade putting out the fire. But it wasn't too bad, and to be honest, we were so glad no one was hurt that we just were relieved to get out safely. But that was 2 years ago to this month. 2 years in which 25 families have been effectively homeless. As a leaseholder, the council, my freeholder, took my front door key off me. It's not a glamorous house, by the way, but it's mine, or so I thought. And they basically said, you'll get back once we've made the block safe. And now, 2 years later, I'm still not back, and I've got no idea when I can go home. Now, I've mentioned this story before. It's not just therapy. It's to show how what can start as an unremarkable but unpleasant event, a fire, in lockdown, has escalated and turned into a nightmarish, never-ending misery for so many people. And at every turn, we as leaseholders and tenants have faced layers and layers of bureaucracy getting in our way. More and more people to deal with, more and more issues being raised to explain why we aren't returning home, and dwindling effectiveness in terms of getting our homes back to us. And a certain indifference, I have to say, shown to leaseholders and council tenants about our plights, all of which has been much worse, if I'm honest, than the original fire. But it's okay because Haringey have lots of safety signs and safety trumps all, and is used to say to us, shut up and put up. I arrived at this place during the time of my eviction from the house and was inspired by the Reverend Prelate, the Bishop of St Albans, and the noble Baroness Pinnock, who I heard speak on the issues of what was happening to leaseholders, and I thought I'm going to join that debate. And I was inspired by their dedication, what they said, and that's how I ended up here. Now, the moral of this tale is that I want to make sure that this bill, which is well-intentioned in terms of safety, doesn't, in the name of safety, end up with the unintended escalation of a whole new set of problems for leaseholders, which was the point of the analogy with my flat fire. So the purpose of this particular amendment, and actually I prefer a similar but better amendment by the noble Baroness Neville Rolfe, who's trying to do the same thing, is that it requires the government to commit to review the impact of this legislation in a couple of years. And it does that, and it does say to the government, can you just check in all instances that the legislation doesn't cause more problems than you set out to, that it's actually doing what you want it to do, or what we in the House have been told you want it to do. As we speak, we are rather rushing through the bill. There are whole swathes of new amendments that have emerged, and these have not been necessarily put in by my noble lords, but by the government. And I was happy to hear earlier the Minister explain that the reason there are so many amendments is because the Minister and the Secretary of State and the Department are listening. But whatever way you look at it, we've been presented, as people scrutinise this bill, with hundreds of amendments that it's been quite hard to get one's head round in the time. It's basically, in many ways, not been fully line-by-line scrutinised. And as the noble Lord Jordan put it earlier, I mean, it really is a kind of legislative quagmire to kind of wade your way through, and it's very difficult. Honestly, reading the new amendments and assessing what the nuances mean, looking for what the consequences might be, has been almost impossible. I appreciate that's from me, and I'm a layperson on the technicalities. But luckily, as has already been mentioned, actually, the leaseholders have a few important voluntary heroes who have helped the rest of us through. And I do know that the lawyer and leaseholder Liam Spender has already been name-checked for his multicoloured sheet, which has already been shown. But honestly, if you haven't seen it, my lords, it's well worth studying, because it really does explain things. But also there are people like all sorts of kind of reporters for leasehold knowledge, all sorts of intrepid leaseholders doing their own work, trying to get to grips with what all these new amendments mean, what the bill means. And the reason I mention that is because I think that it is just would be irresponsible if we passed this bill and then kind of let it sail off into the distance and didn't have any idea that we could look at it again, or that it will be looked at again. And I worry that the government think that once this bill has passed and gone through, that all will be solved. And I just don't want hostages to fortune. We've had lots and lots of reassurances today. We've been told not to worry. That a lot of we've had a great rhetoric from the government on proportionality and common sense. But I do think that, therefore, we need to be able to check that that rhetoric is actually going to be fulfilled. Finally, this is not all about leaseholders. My hunch is that the bill has a range of problems with it because it's gone along uncritically with the picture painted by, particularly actually, Dame Judith Hackett, that somehow every aspect of living in a flat should be seen as a potential hazard and a dangerous fire risk. And I do think that for the last few years, and it's understandable because of Grenfell, there's been a certain hyperactive, something must be done mentality that did lead to the EWS1 crisis, and has caused many of the issues that informed the last group discussion on innocent victims paying for excessive remediation. So all I'm asking is that this view checks back, that there isn't an overzealousness that emerges from the legislation that will skew priorities and mean the government's valiant efforts at common sense and proportionality somehow don't end up in a proliferation of chunky, formalised procedures. And I was just reflecting on the other people we should bear in mind, because I've emphasised throughout this leaseholders, but actually in my second reading speech I also talked about this construction industry as well. I do want to make sure that we don't end up stymieing the house building programme through over-regulation as well. There is a danger, I think, that in some of the contributions that we describe the construction business as though they're all cowboy builders, which is a rather insulting caricature. But in another hat, at another time, I'd be saying that the big crisis in this country is that lack of housing, and we need to build, build, build. So I do get worried when the House Builders Federation themselves say that they're concerned that there will be a difficulty in housing delivery if too much of a burden is put on them. And you might say, well, I'm not going to feel sorry for them, but we don't want to get ourselves into a situation whereby the extraction of funds from the construction industry means that the UK home building industry, that is so important to so many parts of levelling up and social equality and so on, is not stymied. So, one way or another, I can think of nothing more sensible for a common sense minister than saying in a couple of years we'll review all this and check that your hunches are wrong, Baroness Fox, and then that'll be fine. He did actually, the noble minister did earlier refer to me as Oliver Twist, always wanting more. This is only a little bit more, but I have to say you can't change the world unless you want more. And I'm going to intend to demand a far lot more, but maybe only a little bit more in this bill.
Amendment proposed insert the following new clauses set out on the Marshall